Salutations, crafters and Nancy Drew fans. Today I'm doing a reaction video. As you well know, Gingerhoneylovebeet has put out her very first video and I just had to react to it. In all fairness, she's given me permission to react to this. It is not a blind reaction because I have seen it all. And finally, Liv is my best friend, so I might be a little bit biased. But I think you're gonna find some pretty interesting thoughts here, so let's dive in. Okay, pretty cool image here.
Hello everyone, my name is Liv and welcome to my channel. I go by Gingerhoneylovebeet and on Instagram still as @NancyDrewIsBay. It's great to have you here. Thank you for tuning into my content. Today I have actually an uploaded video I'm posting as opposed to a live stream. That is a little project I've been working on for a little while. I had this idea a little while back and realized when playing Sea of Darkness, it feels very repetitive when it comes to the puzzles. While there are a lot of unique differences and just in general puzzles that do feel in a lot of ways very unique within the Nancy Drew universe, they also have this thread that's going throughout them that is tying them together and makes them still feel very repetitive even though they are so unique. And I thought about it and was looking at them and realized what I believe that thread is. And that thread is this idea of Sudoku. Now, you are free to take issue with my definition of this or my conclusion, but basically
We still love you.
puzzles emanating the vibe of Sudoku is that they have this concept that you are supposed to, maybe have certain rules for how you place things in a grid or a grid-like expanse, and you have these very particular rules for placing things in a way that either involves one of a kind or math or something that to me gives that vibe of Sudoku.
Yeah, when you're looking at it from that definition though, having the rules and having a grid I would argue doesn't only apply to Sudoku. If you looked at Sudoku that way, like almost every puzzle that you could think of that isn't like a word puzzle or a logic puzzle, it's gonna end up looking like Sudoku. I think that's too broad of a definition of Sudoku and a thought process of Sudoku. But let's keep listening.
And like I said, you are more than welcome to disagree with my conclusion here or with that definition of Sudoku. Say, Liv, that's not what Sudoku is. That is far too broad a definition. Sudoku
oh wait, that's exactly what she said.
One number in the column or row within that segment, and I will grant you that is a more precise definition of Sudoku. However, I will also say if we use a more strict definition of Sudoku, there are still several puzzles that fit pretty well into that definition of Sudoku, where they are involving those tactics. And one puzzle that actually is truly Sudoku, but doing something very different and unique, and I will get to that towards the end of this video, that I feel like that puzzle was absolutely fantastic, very clever, very unique, but because of the puzzles coming before it, I feel like it lost that special touch that it should have had, because those puzzles before it had that vibe of Sudoku. And so because we already did Sudoku puzzles, or that's how it felt throughout the game leading up to that puzzle, by the time we got to that final Sudoku puzzle, that was truly a unique Sudoku puzzle. We were tired of doing Sudoku, and it lost its special touch, and it didn't have that presence I feel like it should have had as a really unique, clever puzzle. And so in this video, I will be looking at the different puzzles that we have throughout this game, specifically those that I feel fall into this category as Sudoku aesthetic. And so, without further ado, let's hop into this analysis of these puzzles. The cooking puzzle in Sea of Darkness is one that I feel has a lot of mixed feelings surrounding it within the fandom. I think there's a lot of people who really like it, and there's a lot of people who absolutely hate it. A lot of people who really don't understand how it works as well. And I was definitely in that camp when the game first came out, when I first played it. First couple playthroughs or so, for none of those did I understand how it actually worked. And here's the thing, when I looked at it and discovered it's just Sudoku, it all started to finally make sense.
Yes, I do think that this puzzle has a lot of mixed feelings. I completely 100% agree with that. I know that it is one of those puzzles where you either love it or you hate it. And the hating part of it is the not, like a lot of it ends up being because you can't understand it. I think that it's also a little too fast, in my opinion. I think it's a very tricky puzzle. It has nothing, absolutely nothing, to do with Sudoku. This is simply a pattern puzzle. A pattern puzzle. You have these fulfillments that are patterns. These are all patterns, and you have to get all of those patterns to fit within this expanse and these boxes. So yeah, it's merely a pattern puzzle. It's a very difficult pattern puzzle, but it has nothing to do with Sudoku, because it's not that in each of these boxes you have to get every single one of these images in each of these boxes or in all of the rows. That's how Sudoku works. If this was a Sudoku puzzle, what it would be is you would have these three images.
And you would have this box, this grid, and you would have to make sure that in each box it has, in each row, and each box and each column, so this would be box 1, box 2, box 3, you would, in each one would have to have all three of these in it with no repetitions in both row and box. So like, it would be hard to explain because it would look completely different. It is with a Sudoku puzzle. If it was a Sudoku puzzle, it would look completely different. This is merely just a pattern puzzle. Do I think that you should approach it in the same way that you would Sudoku? No, not really. It might work for some people. Like, apparently it made sense to Liv, but yeah, I would say for most people, I think if you tried to tell them, think of it like a Sudoku, it would actually confuse them further. So I recognize that it's not, a straightforward Sudoku puzzle, but again, it functions with those rules. Not the same rules Sudoku embodies, and so
So I recognize that it's not, a straightforward Sudoku puzzle, but again, it functions with those rules that
Not the same rules.
Sudoku embodies. And so you have, your rows that you have to put the specific items within those rows, but then instead of just columns, they've done it where it's condensed, and so it's a diagonal or a zigzag shape.
Yeah, so what she's saying with the zigzag shape is that this is a Z, and so some of the patterns will end up looking in a Z shape, coming out as a Z shape, rather than 1, 2, 3, 4. But that, that's just not. It's just not Sudoku because, well, one, you've got like empty boxes. I mean, that's not really the only factor that disqualifies it, but and I explained how it would look in order for this to become we wouldn't have this pattern menu, I guess, request to have with it. In a lot of ways, it's kind of like bento. That would be a much better description of this, and it's just a pattern puzzle. But this is much harder than bento, but it has the same concept as bento. You are given what you are supposed to be fulfilled. You get the boxes, and you have to make the pattern work based on what you have. It's more like bento than it is like Sudoku. It's a pattern puzzle. Pattern puzzle.
Instead of a straightforward column system. And so it's segmented in this way so that you give your readouts for columns going across, and then within the color-coded sections on that Z-shaped pattern instead of...
Yeah, but in order for it to be Sudoku, you'd have to have each one of these in each of these things. That's how Sudoku works.
Top to bottom column. And so it is very unique in that sense that I feel like this is the first puzzle in Nancy Drew that we've seen have this mechanic to it. It's kind of hard to explain, but I think it is a very unique puzzle,
but it is a lot like bento.
How to place everything to give.
So I would say it's not as unique as we might think. It's just a lot harder than the bento from Saw.
But at first I can absolutely see how it's intimidating. And I think it's because it uses those rules of Sudoku, but it does so in a way that is innovative and not something you would come up with on your own without really experiencing how it's working. Another way of calling this one would be to say Sudoku, but cooking.
Bento, but in
So
Iceland.
The captain's desk puzzle that we have to solve in order to get into this desk where we have a panel, which in this case I think this really does look like a Sudoku puzzle. And
I can see how it looks like it would be. Okay, I can see how it would look like a Sudoku puzzle, but this works nothing like a Sudoku puzzle. So there's a few factors. So in here we have our color palette, and we have sets of numbers. Our color palette and our sets of numbers. And so here's what we're looking at here. In each, how this puzzle works is you find out that the way you need to do it is you have to fill in these two empty boxes. This is more close to Sudoku than I would on the previous one, but it's not Sudoku at all. In Sudoku, you do not have any math. No math involved. You just count 1 to 9. 1 to 9. And that's in this, the numbers only apply horizontal, sorry. And you have to add. That's the big thing. You have to add. All of these add up. So 3, 7, 9. 3, 8, 9. 1, 3, 8. So, 1, 3, and 8. Then you've got 1, 3, 5, and 6. And then you've got 6 and 2. And 4, 3, which is 7, plus 2 is 9. 2, 3, which is 5, plus 4. 5 plus 4 is 9. Anyways, all of these are supposed to add up. They add up to 9. So what you would do here is you would use this and say, oh, this doesn't add up to 9, so I'm going to add the number here. And then same goes for here. Next up, then you have the colors. You have a specific pattern, and I want you to see if you can see the pattern. There is a pattern going on, and you have to find it. This is merely a pattern puzzle. You look for the pattern that's going on in the rest of the box, both in color and in number, and that's how you fulfill the pattern that is within place.
But there are very specific rules that you have to figure out and follow, and you have to place the numbers, and in this case also colors, based on those rules that you discover. So it's...
This is what I want to say. This is something that Liv says a lot in the video. I love you, Liv. Like, you are totally entitled to your opinion, but just because it has rules does not Sudoku make.
Kind of Sudoku, but with
a puzzle
rules, you have to
always requires rules.
It still gives that view, and I'm going to count it as one of the Sudoku puzzles. So here's a puzzle that I feel maybe this could be very controversial.
Yes.
I don't even know how you would call this puzzle, but the puzzle where you have to give the readout of the correct words, the sailing terms, and ship terminology that you have to give as readouts going either down in columns or sideways in rows. Again, I feel like this has that vibe of Sudoku. It's not using the number system, but it is doing something here where we again have these specific rules that we have to follow, and you have to completely fill up each row and each column with all either red or blue filled in boxes. And so everything is being used up and you're getting these readouts. And so I feel like it embodies some of that vibe of Sudoku, that you're going through a grid solving this puzzle with these specific parameters that you have to follow, and you can only use each letter once within a column or row, and so everything is being used once, and I feel like it catches on to some of those things with Sudoku.
Okay, so what she's saying, you've got a grid, which is Sudoku most typically. It is in a grid. I had to correct myself there. Just because it's not using the number system, absolutely. Sudoku is never limited to just numbers. We've seen this before. You can see it in Ransom of the Seven Ships when you go diving and have the color Sudoku. So that is an example of Sudoku not having to be just limited to numbers. But I would more describe this as a patterned word search. Okay, so you've got your words that are on the list, and you have to find them, and when you do, you have to figure out which spot it works in so that you can get all of them in and not have the repeating. That is something that is very true. You cannot use a letter more than once in the row and column. But it's not Sudoku. It's just because it has a rule that sounds similar, the rule isn't the same in each one.
But again, even if you want to disregard that, there's other puzzles within this game that this is similar to. It's using rows and columns and reading out on different directions like the cooking puzzle does. And so there are some similarities with other puzzles, as well as having this Sudoku aesthetic. So Sudoku, but it's a word search. Okay, repairing the heater. This one actually might be the most controversial in this list I'm compiling, because I can see why people would argue this doesn't feel that much like Sudoku. But to me, this puzzle, again, it's a grid with numbers, and you can only use numbers within each particular space once. Like, you can't overlap your colored pieces, so you're using things once, and you have to get the number readouts that are your targets. You have to get each of those once, and you're working within this grid of numbers, and so it uses some of those elements of Sudoku. And so I feel like it does embody that same spirit, where you're working in those specific parameters. And so I'm going to call this one Sudoku, but Tetris.
Okay, so I kind of am starting to formulate what she's really saying. It's not that she's saying that these puzzles are Sudoku or Sudoku-like. She's just saying they're all in grids. The very fact that they're all in grids makes it like Sudoku. But you can't claim that it's Sudoku just because they're all in a grid. That they use a grid. In fact, a lot of puzzles involve using grids.
Okay, this puzzle. This pyramid math puzzle. It baffles me that this puzzle made it into the game as not only a puzzle to do in a game that's already 90% math puzzles or number puzzles, but also that it's a timed puzzle. Like, I did well with math when I was growing up and never really struggled with that. I took advanced college level math courses while I was in high school still, and actually went to math competitions. But still, I feel like this is not an appropriate game puzzle to have that is timed like this, because the time frame is relatively short. And I mean, the older I get, the less difficult I feel like this puzzle is. And I've done it multiple times. And
okay, so I think so I don't know I think so far it's just her complaining about the puzzle, which is fine. Like, she has every right to dislike the puzzle. I think it's actually pretty simple. Do I think that the timing's short? I can't quite remember. I think it is kind of short, so maybe if they lengthen it, but I don't think that means that they didn't have to put it in or shouldn't have put it in. It's pretty simple. You've got your base numbers that are solidified, and you start off with finding two that are connected. So you have two that are touching, and you take the top number and subtract the little number, and you get the next number. Okay? Then with that, you go to this one and you take the top number, subtract the little number, and then you find the difference and put that difference number there. That is going to get you started. Okay? And that should get you started. That's just for those who haven't seen the puzzle or haven't played it or hate it or don't understand it. That's how the puzzle works. Does it have a quote-unquote grid? Yes. Is it Sudoku? No. I would actually argue that this is the furthest one. This is actually the most controversial one, in my opinion. Not the one before. This one is. Because it is the furthest thing from Sudoku. Sudoku is literally no math. No math. This is all just math. This is a math puzzle. That's it.
kind of figured out the strategy.
Not a Sudoku.
Approach it, and so it's not as overwhelming.
Yeah.
But that's coming from someone like myself who has never had trouble with numbers or math or anything like that. And so people...
I've always had trouble with numbers and math, and this puzzle doesn't overwhelm me.
Trouble with numbers, get stressed out by numbers or math or arithmetic.
I can understand people struggling with this puzzle, and I think if they just lengthen the time limit a little bit, it would be spot on. It's fine. There's actually barely any math that we've done so far. Barely any math that we've done so far.
And just have a lot of trouble with this.
And just because it's numbers does not Sudoku make.
Again, might be controversial that I'm including this as a Sudoku puzzle, but we have blocks that have to have a number go in it, and you have these numbers that you're fitting into grid spaces, and I don't know how to explain it, but I feel like I feel like it's got that Sudoku vibe, and I don't know if it's just because it's math, and so I'm just including it in there.
Math has nothing to do with Sudoku.
And I'm gonna stick with it. Okay, now we're getting into some more puzzles that I would say are pretty definitively Sudoku with the plush animals. So this puzzle, it is just Sudoku.
Sudoku would not have all of this. It would literally just say, get all of these, like, let's just say that it let it have 2, which it wouldn't, by the way. Sudoku does not let repeating things happen. It would just tell us to put 2 of each of these in each row and column with no repeating. But the problem with this is it has all of this. You have to fulfill all of these things. It doesn't make Sudoku. I can see how this has more qualities to it like Sudoku. You have the grid, you have the things you're supposed to fill the grid in with, and you're supposed to make sure that you get all of them within each one, both row and column. But because there's all of these, it doesn't make Sudoku.
And sure, you have more than one of each item in your rows and columns, but you still have a limit. You only have 2 of each item within every column, row, and in this case, the diagonals as well.
I can see that, yep.
Of course, that only applies to 2 diagonals because only 2 diagonals are the entire number of the plushies. And so it's only that.
Diagonals actually don't apply to every single Sudoku puzzle, actually.
That 1 to F diagonal and that A to 1, or A6 to 1 diagonal, however you want to call it. But you have these specific rules, and it gives it to you on the left for how to place these within the grid. And you solve it the same way as you would a Sudoku puzzle. You look at what you've got in your row and column, and you know, I've already got 2 dogs in this one column, so that means I can't put any more dogs in that column, and the other things will be puffins or horses. And so the way you approach it is the same you would a Sudoku puzzle.
I can agree with that.
It's Sudoku, but plushies.
So
because Sudoku but plushies wasn't enough, Magnus's cabin also needed a second Sudoku puzzle, apparently. And so we have...
Okay, I think we took a step back, because the plushies was close, but this isn't. This is a pattern puzzle. So, again, we have a grid. Okay? We have these numbers on the side. I will admit that the numbers are confusing. It's not that you're fulfilling anything with these numbers. It's the numbers are telling you what is going on. So there are 2 yellow and 0 blues. There is 1 yellow and 2 blues. You want to make it so that it's 4 and 4. Okay? So that's why the numbers seem kind of confusing and overwhelming. This is simply a pattern puzzle where you just can't have more than 2 next to each other, and you want to make sure that there's 4 of all. And yeah, so that's literally just the puzzle. It's a pattern puzzle. A logic puzzle. Probably more of a logic puzzle than a pattern puzzle. Sorry, I'm gonna keep doing that, aren't I?
What I call Sudoku but crystals. And so we have this grid that functions pretty much exactly the same as the plushies one in a lot of ways. And so you have your blue crystals and your gold crystals, and you only put 4 in. But
this puzzle isn't overwhelming because it kind of shows you visually when you mess something up. So you'll see how it's lit up on the side. That means it's fine. But when it doesn't light up, it means something is wrong. It means you have too many going on
in each row and column.
See? Did you see how when it was yellow, all of these yellows unlit, but then when she turned it to blue, it all lit up again? That's because it's correcting you. So I just can't have any complications with this puzzle at all. I think it feels similar because a lot of these feel like patterns and they're in grids. I don't think it's that it feels like Sudoku. I think it feels like it's patterns. Yeah, so I don't know. We're just really unpacking here, guys. Like, sit tight, get comfortable, lean back.
And you can't have more than 2 in a row together. So you have these specific rules, and you have to follow them as you place these within this grid. And again, you approach it the same way you do Sudoku, that you have those rules about how these symbols interact with each other and how they are placed, and you place them in light of that knowledge of how they are supposed to be presented. And so I think it does give that element of Sudoku, where again, you're just figuring out how to place things within a grid. Yet again, multiple puzzles doing that in this game, but we're doing it again. Like I said, you finish the plushies puzzle, and then you immediately turn to the right and have to solve this puzzle. And it just feels like a lot back to back in this one house. But maybe that's just me.
I do think that they feel similar, they look similar, but I don't think that the similarity is across to Sudoku. I am actually going to have to stop the recording and do a part 2 because this video is getting long, guys. So thanks for hopping in. Make sure to check out my part 2 coming soon.